I walked on stage and said, I'm fearful. If you want to know what being scared shitless and doing it anyway looks like, that's me.
You literally said that.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
And I've learned the greatest piece of who we are is our vulnerability when it comes to being able to stand on stage like that and share. You know, for a parent, it's like, you know, when you yell at your kid and then you can go back and be like, I'm sorry, I was angry at that moment in time. When you can go back and be vulnerable with your kid, it's the vulnerability is what is the genius. It's the open-heartedness that happens there. It's when you can bring all of you to the moment and be present with what is, instead of trying to like put on this mask, you know, to face the world.
All right. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the show. Today's an honor. I guess she's an icon. I think I would say she's an icon. I'm going to say that out loud.
At 40?
She's an icon. She's iconic for sure. And she's just a really special being. She's an immensely gifted artist, and you all know who she is once I say her name. But I've just watched her. When I used to watch her when she was young, I thought she was this really young soul. And as I've watched her become a woman, I think she stepped into a space where she's actually like a very old soul.
No, thank you.
And very wise. She's gone through a lot. She's grown a lot. And she's got a new album out, by the way, that I absolutely love. I cried listening to a song on there called How Much a Heart Can Hold with my wife. And her new album is called God's Work. And I'm really honored that she's here today to share some time with all of you that I love so much. So, LeAnn Rimes, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's so good, finally.
I know.
We met a bunch of years ago.
Yes.
And like I get Christmas cards and stuff from you, but
like 4 years ago, I guess it was.
I think
was
so.
It?
I think it was. And then, you know, like I've just become such a fan of you.
Thanks. Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Why the album now? What was the timing now?
You know, it really just kind of came through me. I'm one of those people. I love creation. I love creativity, and I'm constantly creating, and I'm constantly drawing from life and our life experiences. And the whole album was truly informed by what we all went through together, I think, as a collective over the past 3 years, and still are going through. I think it was timely, and out of every conversation I have, or like it can be anything in life. It can be a billboard I see, like something will pop out at me and I'll write down all these different titles on my phone. And then I'll take all of those titles and I'll put them on a whiteboard.
Yeah,
and
really?
I'll start to like see there's usually a through line somehow. In some of the songs I know what I want them to be about, some of them I don't. And God's Work was one of the titles, and it seems like everything I had to write about fell under that umbrella. I mean, everything falls under that umbrella.
Right.
So I was like, you know, that's an interesting title for a record, because it can be so, it can be so polarizing.
Yeah, I was just thinking.
Yeah, it can be incredibly polarizing. And even that word for me was incredibly polarizing for my whole life. I was raised Southern Baptist. I ran as far away from it as possible. And it was really a reclamation of that word for myself. And I felt like I wanted to, throughout the record, you know, I really kind of look at the duality of life, the human and the holy of things, and how that all plays into our worlds. And I wanted to give people the permission to reclaim that word for themselves. And so I feel like that's kind of what the album does. It's like, it doesn't want to run away from our humanness. It includes all of it. And I want people to understand that, you know, our humanity can't be left out of our experience. It can't be left out of creation. And so it's a deep record, and it just kind of fell through me. It came through me, and I was like, okay, I'm surrendering to this process.
I love that. I had it's so funny you say that, because I was preparing. I'm like, do I want to go there right off the top with her? Like this
I'll
whole
go there right off the top.
No, but to your point, like I actually think there's a consciousness shift in all different types of faiths regarding that. Had a pastor on my show named Erwin McManus. Do you know who Erwin is?
I know him, yeah. He's amazing.
Yeah, I thought that you would think that, and I thought that you might know him. And he talks often about, in his version of his Christian faith, is the genius of Jesus, and that there's a genius in all of us. And so he very much connects our humanity to God in our experience here. It's not absent of it. And so
exactly.
I was thinking about him, and I was thinking about you when that happened. So let's just go there for a minute.
Yeah.
What does that word mean to you now? When I say God to you, what does that mean to you?
It does mean creation. I think you can insert the word love. I think it is the essence of who we truly are when you remove all of the mental constructs and the societal programming, the parental programming. I think it's just the core essence of who we are. I think there is a genius in that.
Mm-hmm.
And, I feel like we've been told through religion, and I think there's many beautiful things about religion,
Right.
and there's many things that I've learned
Mm-hmm.
through many different teachings. But I feel like when we've been told that our humanity is sinful and it's, unholy. And I think I know my own experience. Like I've tried to run away from all those aspects of myself, all the aspects of my shadow.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not till I started to turn toward that and accept that and start to bring that into the wholeness of who I am, did I feel actually get to experience, what I believe is God.
Well, if you really want to go really deep, let's do it.
Sure.
But this idea in some faith that, there's the absence of humanity in faith removes sort of this idea of sin. If there's sin, there means there's humans, there's humanity, there's frailties, there's struggles, there's a part of our life that oftentimes people in faith, I think, never face themselves.
Yes.
They never look inward. They're always looking outward.
Yeah.
And there's something profound about also looking inward. If we didn't need to look inward, there wouldn't be sin. There wouldn't be struggle. There wouldn't be the idea that I need something outside of myself if we don't look at ourselves. So I'm 100% on the road with you here.
Well, and
so I love
say
it.
sin is really missing the mark, which I love that explanation of sin. And I feel like it's, for me, what I've kind of gathered from that statement. It's missing the mark of that genius that we truly are, missing the mark of that essence of the core of who we are. I think there's so much, like, I've talked about anxiety and depression and so many different things that we all struggle with in some way, shape, or form. And our genius, our core essence can get so clouded. And it's really finding the way back to that inner voice. I mean, I think that's what this record kind of points to is, I feel like until we're about 6 or 7 years old, like we're so in touch with our inner world, our inner voice, our little inner genius, our play,
Oh my gosh.
our innocence. And, there's a song on the record called Innocent. And I started to dig into it for myself of, that thought of that we're always told, that there's a loss of innocence somewhere along the line.
Yeah.
I mean, you go back to the apple and Adam and Eve, there's a loss of innocence. And I don't feel like I had this experience. I was doing a lot of somatic work, and I was going through this one session, and I had this like energy that felt like it was hanging outside of me, and it dropped in. And when it dropped into my body, I felt this overwhelming amount of joy. And it lasted for about 48 hours. And I wrote that song Innocent in that time. And I was reading a lot about child sex trafficking at the time too. And it just, something clicked for me, and especially my childhood too of, it's like I didn't really have one. And we've been told we lose our innocence, and I'm like, no, it's there. It's still there. We don't lose it. It just gets clouded. And I feel like, religion is one of those things that, like you were saying, always looking outside of you, never looking in. And we get these things in our head of like loss of innocence, that there's something wrong with us, that we're sinful.
Yep.
And they stick, and it's amazing how much that drives your life. And when for me, when I had that experience of what felt like my purity, my innocence, that still was there, it was like, oh, this hasn't gone anywhere. And I wanted everybody to know, like, this is here.
Yes.
So, and I've, I lose touch with that all the time.
So
I think that's the dance, right?
So do I. Well, by the way, we're going there, aren't we, everybody? We're 5 minutes in. But I want to say something to you. It's amazing how much, I want to unpack some things there. Our work on ourselves lines up, you and I.
It does.
Well, I'll tell you a couple things. One, like all these years I've been, helping with people, their lives and different aspects of personal development or business and stuff. And my work has just moved into this space that all creation, all great things come from love. And I've been talking about this, like my dad getting sober. Why did my dad finally get sober when he quit drinking? Because he loved his family so much. From love, he wanted to try one more time. And this notion of childhood, I write in my book a lot about this thing, why are we happier when we're children? And this genius thing, I think it's somewhat connected to imagination. And so that when we're children, see, there's two ways to operate, I think, in life. One is out of history and memory, and the other one's out of imagination and dreams and genius and creativity. And at some point in most of our lives, yours earlier than most. I lost my childhood because I had to be the man of the house with an alcoholic dad. Right. You lost yours, I think, because of your career, right? But when we're children, we're typically happier because we don't have a history in memory. We're in our imagination. We're in our creativity. We're in our dreams. And at some point, we start to have a history, and we start to operate out of that history and memory. And I think that suppresses our genius. It suppresses our imagination.
Well, and something I've learned about myself is I have a very vivid imagination.
Sure.
I was an only child. I played by myself. Like I talked to, things that weren't there constantly.
Me too.
And when you start to have that history and those traumas meld with a really intense imagination, like I make up so much that's not there. And I've had to learn I've had to learn to utilize my imagination for something better, or else if it's like idle hands or devil's handiwork kind of thing. It's like if it's just sitting there not doing anything productive and guiding it in the right direction, it will just totally go over and take all my traumas, and it'll make up all the things, it'll bring it all into the now.
Yep.
So I've had to really learn how to direct that. And I think that's why music for me and writing is such an outlet, because it allows me to direct that wild imagination into something powerful.
I'm the same way. I did it last night. No, I did last night. I woke up at 2:30, and I just started stacking anxieties and worries and things I've got to do and stuff that's not going right. And I'm stacking it. And I finally went, you're doing it again.
Yeah.
I literally, in the middle of my almost halfway asleep, I go, you're doing it again. Can you not at least sleep through this? So it creeps back on me too. Do you?
Oh God, I understand so deeply. Yeah. I mean, my sleep is not great. And my Oura ring yells at me all the time.
My Oura ring was yelling at me. I posted it this morning. Yeah. Here's my Oura ring. Look how many times I'm up. And this one's for an hour.
Yeah.
Where I'm just like, you just dumbass. Ruminating. You're just doing it over and over.
That's
half
where
of it's not even true.
Compassion comes in. We're not going to call ourselves a dumbass.
Right,
We're going to call it.
I love myself.
I love you. It's okay. No, but it's so easy. And then you get into that trap of doing exactly that, going, oh, you're doing it again. This is so stupid. And then you go into judgment. And then it's just like, okay, well, now I'm judging myself. And then it becomes this circular thing.
For me, what is good, and I know you've had this too, when I have an awareness over something, it kind of loses its power over me. So rather than calling it, I'm kind of being funny. I'm like, you are doing it again, dude. And it's almost become, because I have done work on myself, which we'll talk about with you in a second. It almost does become come on, man. You're doing it. Aren't you tired of doing this? You're doing it again.
It's a habit.
It's a habit. It's history and memory.
It is. And
it's a memory.
It's the addiction of, I know I'm addicted to anxiety. It's for me, I have kind of two speeds. I have anxiety, and I go into freeze mode. And that was a protective mechanism for me. When I needed rest and I couldn't say no as a kid, I went into freeze. And so my anxiety for performance has always been the mechanism that has driven me out of freeze in order to work. And so I've had these two modes that it still happens all the time.
Really?
But my awareness of it, like you're saying, the awareness of it, it's oh, this is what's happening. I don't have to beat myself up about it. It's just my nervous system doing what it's trained to do.
Yep.
And we can figure out a way out of this.
Right.
But it's the awareness of it is what's key.
Our addiction to anxiety we share. I wonder if we'd be really good for each other when we point it out, or if we would just constantly pour it on them.
Let's go do
it.
You
think you're worried. I'm really worried. We just,
Exactly.
I wonder if we would be good for one another, because I do it too. I think we become addicted to the familiar, even if it doesn't serve us, right? We love the familiar. And I used to brag that, man, I am great under stress.
Yeah.
I would brag about it, man. You should see how great I am under stress. And then what I would do is create stress so that I thought I could be great. I would create the familiar. And if I woke up one day, I'm like, so is this what I want to do the rest of my life? Is somehow be great under stress all the time?
Agreed.
So I don't want to do that. So let me ask you a question. When I hear you sing, I don't mean to float your boat, but I don't know if you ever heard this before, but you're really good at it.
Thanks. I was thinking about trying it, maybe as a job.
But talking about God, I was like, why do I sometimes cry when I hear her sing?
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's maybe there's the presence of God there.
Yeah.
Do you believe that?
Yeah.
How much of what you have is given to you through a gift, and how much of it is that you've worked at it?
I think it's, I think I came in with it. I mean, my dad has tapes of me singing at 18 months old, full on, could carry a tune, hear pitch. There's something I did come in this world with it.
Mm.
And then I definitely have worked at it, and I've worked at it more in the last couple of years. I've been on the road my whole life, and with COVID, like I didn't sing really for 2 years. I made the record, but that was like here and there. And I was constantly like in quote unquote practice,
Yeah.
And so I've actually worked at retraining my muscle to build it back up so I can go work again on a consistent basis. So this is the first time in my life that I've really had to ever work at it. But yeah, it's the vocal cords are these tiny muscles, and it's like anything else in the body. Like they can hold inflammation, they can get tired. Like, it's kind of crazy that the thing there is in my body, and I have to remember like everything else I do in my life affects that thing.
I would challenge everybody that they're going to go get your album, right? Go make sure that you go get God's work. And if you can get through that whole album without crying or getting emotional, there's something wrong with you. Yeah,
you need to go see a therapist.
You literally immediately need to go see a therapist because it's moving.
Yeah, it's meant to be. I mean, that's the thing. I feel like part of my gift is, as I've gotten older, what I've realized is to help people feel. And I know it's part of my gift to myself too. Music was always an outlet to be able to express the things that were scary to express.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's when I make an album, that's part of what I'm doing too, is helping people express things. And, on this record, we go into grief and rage and, and loneliness and love and hope. And like, we run the gamut. And, I feel like there is something that kind of opens up when I sing and I connect to something else.
You must.
Yeah, I do.
I think when I'm experiencing great art, even like a great speech, if I hear someone give a speech, but particularly like with your work, I find myself almost leaving the music from sometimes and like reflecting on my own life. Like I leave what you're actually saying for a few minutes, but the way you're saying it, the energy that comes from it, what I'm feeling causes me to think about things that seem not correlated but are.
Yeah.
And I can only explain that that's a spiritual experience.
Yeah.
When that happens.
Yeah.
I just want you to know you do that for me.
Thank you.
So we said that if you like don't cry when you listen to the album, you should probably go to therapy. And I want to talk to you about that. Because I talk openly about like different struggles I've had with, mental health or anxiety or worry. And I think it takes courage for anybody to do that. I think it takes extra courage when you're a public person like I am. And then I think it takes extra courage when you're a public person like you are. So I have to imagine, was it like was there a catalyst where you went, because you actually went somewhere for a while and said, I'm just going to unplug.
Yeah.
Right. So I heard you say something like you felt like you were permanently plugged in all the time.
Oh, I still do sometimes.
Do you?
Yeah, I do. I feel like I have this electrical current that runs through my body, which is maybe partly, I mean, if you want to look at the spiritual aspect of it, maybe it's partly like my connection with all that is that's coming through me. But I do feel like also with my nervous system and the way that I was on, I say it's been on stun since I was a child.
Yeah.
I mean, just growing up in the household I grew up in, there was a lot of arguing, and when you're constantly in that hypervigilant mode, and then taking that already hypervigilant child and putting her into a world where all eyes are on her 24/7. My hypervigilance has been intense, but it's it's interesting. I at 30, I just decided I needed to go get help. I was having horrible anxiety, insomnia, like depression, and I'd never been alone. There's always been someone with me. And when I went into this treatment center, like when the doors locked, like I remember going, oh my God, like I'm alone for the first time.
Really?
Yeah. And it was...
Did they take your phone from you too?
I don't remember if they did, maybe for a moment, maybe for the first few days. Okay. And what no one knows, actually, during this time, I was going through like all these dental surgeries. And while I was in there, I had 5 root canals.
Oh my God.
5 at one time.
Come on.
And while I was in treatment, and they're looking at me, they thought I was like, they thought I was wanting drugs at the beginning of it. They were like, oh yeah, she's just doing this. And then they took me had to have a root canal at midnight one night. My dentist met me. He's like, yeah, we need to do 5. I'm like, see,
oh my gosh.
I wasn't asking for drugs.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it was like, it was just a moment in my life where everything was just falling apart. And it was the greatest gift, to be honest. I mean, we can never see those at that moment in time. But, and from that moment on, I think, I just turned 40, and I feel like these last 10 years have been my own journey of kind of peeling back every layer. And I still have so many layers to peel back.
I love that part.
But I have more, I think now I have more of an understanding of all the little pieces that are how they all fit into this puzzle of me.
You think you know you better than
I do. I know me very well. Sometimes so much, that awareness piece where you're like, I'm aware of this, but I can't do anything about it just yet,
Yes, I do know.
Yeah.
What I love about what you're saying is that I sometimes have conversations with friends of mine where like that one moment changed everything and I was never that way again. No. And I've had a few things in my life like that, but I find that most aren't. Most are like, I made progress there.
Yeah, totally.
I made progress there. I chipped away at something there. And I think that's a really important thing for you to share, if you don't mind, is that you still have these proclivities from time to time, right? I think there are people like, I've gotten better, but I'm not all the way better. And then
is there an all the way better though?
I don't think there is.
I don't know if there is.
I don't think there is.
And I think we get, a lot of this kind of self-help world can also be just another way to shame ourselves.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
And
exactly.
so for me, I've really had to notice that also.
Yeah.
It's like, how am I using this self-help world to run away from the core of everything? And also, how am I using this to stay in a shame cycle where I feel like I'm constantly trying to get better and get better and get better. And it's like, okay, when do I just
exist?
Allow.
Just be. Allow. I'm wow. I hope everyone's enjoying this as much as me because I'm right with you.
Yeah.
Sometimes I even shame myself like, who are you to be giving people all this advice? And you were up at 2:30 last night.
I did the same thing this morning, by the way. I knew I was coming and talk to you. I've had a rough morning and I was like, you get this imposter syndrome.
Or fraudulent.
Yeah, you're completely fraudulent.
Yeah.
And I stopped myself and I was like, no, you're not. You've come a long way and you have a lot to share from the place that you are right now.
Yes.
And then, I have a lot to grow, but it's not, I think my growth is just, I think you get to a point where, for me at least, I want to be better for myself. It's not about anything outside of me.
Yep.
It's like I want to treat myself kinder, and I want to live a happier, more joyful life, and it's for me. And I think there's a big difference in that when that starts to shift. It's so a really big change.
It's so true for everyone. Listen to this. There's too many times in my life where I'm making a change and I'm going, now this is going to be a good lesson for everybody else.
Right. Yeah.
It is helping me.
Yeah.
But instead of just being in it and like, I'm just going to treat myself kinder right now. And if at some point what I'm going through would help some other people, I'll do it. But I think we also get into this thing of, because we have good hearts, we want to help people all the time. Sometimes the most important thing you can do to help everybody else is to care for you.
Yeah.
To help yourself, right? So you go away and you come back, and I'm just curious, like, does the anxiety manifest itself in any area? Like, could even be like coming here today, or
it does.
It does. So you'll still, and what does it look like for you? Like, I don't really want to do this, or I'm not good enough to do this, or how do I get out of doing this, or like.
Oh no, I mean, I definitely, it could manifest in all those ways, actually.
Yeah, me too. That's why I ask.
I think it's definitely kind of comes back to this like worthiness wound.
Wow, it's amazing for you.
I know it is pretty crazy if you think about it because of all that I've accomplished in my life, but I do think that that's why I was so adamant about accomplishing so much, because I felt like I had to in order to receive love.
Me too.
And when you really boil it down, especially for myself, ultimately at the end of the day. And so now I feel like that's definitely quieted down a lot. And like I said, I can stop myself this morning and be like, no, you're like, it's all okay. Like, you can have all the anxiety and all these feelings of unworthiness, and you can still show up, and you're still going to, for me, it's like, I just ask, like, I trust that whatever needs to come through will come through me. And
it is.
And thanks. And that's the thing. Like, for me, I've learned to kind of move that piece of me just to the side, not like out of the way completely, just move it to the side. Tell it can be there. Like, you can have your space in me today. Like, you can be right here, and I'm also with you. There's another part of me that's here too. So it's a bit of compartmentalizing, and at the same time allowing it to be complete. Like, for me in the past, like, I used to never have stage fright, never have anxiety. Like when I was a kid, I felt superhuman. Once I started to see my humanity, it changed everything. All of a sudden I had anxiety. All of a sudden I had stage fright at times. Like I realized.
About when was that?
My humanity. It started, I would say it started right, maybe around 28. Yeah, 27, 28.
Me too. For me, it was when other people started to criticize me a little bit.
Completely.
Yeah.
That's exactly when it happened. My husband and I have been married for 12 years, but we went through, very public affair. And I mean, the press is just brutal. And especially for a woman, and especially for a young woman who they built up to be America's sweetheart forever.
Yeah.
And so it was like the ultimate story for them. And that's when I started judging myself through other people's eyes. And one day that did switch. And like maybe 32 or 33, I realized, wait, these are people's projections onto me. Like I don't have, that's not who I am. My mistakes, I'm not my mistakes, and I'm not who they say I am. And I think that it took me doing a lot of soul searching to recognize who I was in order for that not to be projected upon me.
It's very good.
Yeah.
Same with me.
Yeah. It's intense. It's an intense roller coaster.
Yeah. And by the way, this projection from other people manifests in your life listening to this, maybe the same way it does for LeAnn and I, but maybe differently. Maybe you're living someone's projection in your life.
Yeah.
Your parents projected a particular career on you.
Totally.
Or beliefs in yourself, or what you are or are not good at. They projected that onto you, and you've adapted it, and that's how you live your life.
Yep.
And so a lot of our lives, there's this whole thing, are we living in some ulterior dimension? We're not, but we are oftentimes just living other people's projections. And for me and you, it was like, wow, we were sort of achievers, and then criticism. And then I started to sort of look at myself as if maybe I've been fooling myself the whole time. Maybe
I am that horrible person they
right.
say
Maybe I am. And maybe part of those.
Maybe some of it was true.
Maybe some of it was true for me too.
Some of it, I was like, oh, I can see where I was kind of an asshole at that moment in time. I didn't take other people's feelings into consideration when I did blank, whatever it may have been. I can look back now and go, oh yeah, like there were parts of that were true, but that's not who I am.
Me too.
Yeah.
My way out, I'm curious what some of your ways are. Let's talk about some tools out for you.
Yes.
What works for you?
Ice baths. No, I'm just kidding. We were just talking about how much we can't stand ice baths before the show.
Yeah, it's definitely not ice baths for the two of us right now. That's so dang funny. It's so true. For me, the hardest thing, I'll tell you something interesting, because I've been in front of people. I conflated two things too. I conflated like love with significance. When I did significant things, I felt loved. So if I would just keep doing significant things, and sometimes in life, these things also work for you. Like one of the reasons you were so successful is because you did make this. And then oftentimes in life, if something works for you a little bit, it's really scary to give it up entirely, because you're like, that's part of my recipe. If I don't have anxiety or worry, maybe I won't practice as good, or I won't be on my A game. And so there's a nuance to life. That's the hard part about podcasting or writing a book. It's like there's a nuance to something. But for me, the hardest thing that is now the most beautiful thing is what you just said earlier, me being alone with me. I realized, like, maybe it's different for a woman, but maybe it's not. But like for me, like I never even just stopped and really just like looked at me in a mirror. Like just not, I'd look at like, is my hair messed up or something? But I mean, just like, I love this man. I had never done that. Like, I love this man. This is a good man. I never would stop. I was just doing life. And then this idea of like getting alone with myself and being quiet and like just being with my breathing, and these were so difficult for me. And when they were difficult for me, I thought, well, maybe that's because it would be so valuable for me if I could do it. And so for me, forms of meditation have helped me a lot. Sometimes like actually writing for me can be a form of meditation. So what's worked for you? Like if you were to share with someone who says, I got anxiety, I got worry, I got fear, I got anger, what has actually worked most of the time?
Yeah, I mean, I think that piece of creativity is super important. I mean, we're all creative beings. Like that is our nature. And I think until we nurture that nature, and find a way of doing that. Like, and I think what's so interesting too is we are all so unique. Like what works for one person will not work for the next person possibly. And, it's just you have to find your own path with it. So I dip in and out of things all the time. Meditation is pretty much a non-negotiable for me, even if it's 5 minutes
Me too.
during the day. I just need to sit, breathe, and I'll take in an inhale and do it like double time, double longer exhale. That usually will help my anxiety a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I've really gotten into recently working a lot with my physical body, like balancing my hormones. Like I kind of went from at the beginning meditation and breathing to now like running the gamut of pretty much everything you can think of.
Me too.
But physical, mental, spiritual, like emotional, it's all important. You can't leave one out. You really can't. Writing, I think, has been such a big thing for me also, creating. It's interesting that you just said, because something clicked for me, is you said that, we get projected upon like the things we're good at, things we're not good at. I think leaning into the things I've been told I wasn't good at, like I don't like to dance. Like it really, I do not like to move my body. And I think that also has to do with old religious programming too. But I had this whole thing around, someone told me one time that I was a better singer than I was a dancer, and I stopped dancing. And which, by the way, like I might have been a fine dancer, but if you're going to tell me I'm a better singer, I mean, I was exceptionally good at singing. So I couldn't dance that well too. But yeah, I felt like I just stopped doing it. And so for me, finding what those places are that feel really uncomfortable, and even if it's for me putting one song on and like moving my body freely and when I do that, I'll bawl and I'll have so much joy at the same time. And then I'll stop. I'm like, okay, if that's kind of my threshold of how I lean into those things. But I feel like it's finding those places for people that are scary and walking into them. And you don't have to just, run and jump off the cliff. Like, just dipping a toe into things to expand who we believe ourselves to be. Like it opens our lives up in every other aspect, not just that one little space, but in every other aspect of our life starts to change.
You're so right. That's where I want to go too. You're like doing the interview for me. But like I tied up my identity into everything outside of me. All of my life. So like if I made money or I got a muscle or whatever it was my identity was always tied to the external. Man, it worked for me for a long time.
Yeah, it does. It works.
It works. But it like when I got wealthy or whatever, like it never was quite what I thought it would be when I would get there. And I think it was because I had tied it to the external instead of like I just love this work. I love doing this work. So you had to have had your identity completely tied up in being famous or being a singer. And have you unpacked that at all? Like someone listening to this, your identity could be that, and stay with me, your identity could be that you're a mother.
Yeah.
Well, someday, by the way, you'll be an empty nester. And then what? Right. So it could be anything out there. But you must have had a lot of that.
It's still tied up and to a certain extent around my voice. I went through this few days the other day where I was thinking like, what could I live without? And when I really
what could I live without?
Like could I live without my voice? And that was one big one where I was like, I don't want to, but if I had to, I guess I would have to. And I just looked up at the sky. I was like, don't do that to me. So, this is not an invitation.
Let's not prove it.
To test that theory.
Right.
But there was like my wedding, it was interesting things like my wedding ring, like is really important to me. And it's random little things that I was like.
It's a powerful question.
It was. And it was like, okay, well, maybe that's because of how important like relationships, I was told how important relationships were at a certain age, like, how are these things, why are the few things that I wouldn't really want to let go of, why are they so important? So I went through that for a moment. And my voice is definitely one of those weird things when you're born into this world with something like that. And, as you get older, like things shift and change. And I know that I'm not going to be doing this my whole life. I mean, who knows? But I mean, I at some point, I feel like I want a different experience. That's been a new thing for me too, is that whole term different experience. Especially when shifting things. It's like, oh, I want a different experience. What's a different experience look like? So it's been something I've been playing with. And I know for me, like, I will want a different experience one day than being on the road.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know. I mean, I've had moments like, look, COVID, gave us an opportunity to kind of untangle from all of those things that we were attached to. And I did for a moment, and I was okay with it. I was okay with it. I think, look, I just released an album. I don't even look at charts anymore. Like, I don't know what it did. I really don't. And maybe it's part of that self-preservation. And also part of it, though, is not the reason I do it anymore.
Right.
Like, the reason I do it is to connect with people and help them shift or help them question. And it's really, it's so interesting how my reason for doing things has shifted.
Changed.
It really has.
What would someone listen to this and they just said, hey, I'm curious to I saw you on a stage. I don't remember whose event it was. It was Lewis's.
Oh, yeah.
It was Lewis. I swear I met you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had to go up after you, I think.
You did?
I think I had to go up after you. I was like, I rarely have ever had that feeling in my life. I don't want to go up after that because the room was so moved. I just thought, she's going to be doing this too.
Thanks.
Like, meaning like leveraging this gift she has, but it was much more like direct approach. It wasn't like just enjoy my work. There was a message, spoken message, some chanting with it. I'm just curious. I'm surprised you haven't gone further down that road.
It's something I want to do.
Yeah, well, maybe today's the beginning.
Yeah,
right?
no, right. It is. It's funny when you asked me to come on here. That's what I thought about, and I remember you saying to me, you came up after, and you were like, "You've never done this before," because I had I was going through this whole thing with Lewis. I'm like, I don't speak. I speak during my shows, but like, you're asking me to give a speech. And he's like, just come do it for like 10 minutes and then you can sing and then we'll have a chat. I'm like, cool, I can do that. But it did give me this bug of, this is another way for me to share and connect with people. And when you asked me to do this, it made me think of that. I'm like, you know what? I need to do that.
I've been speaking for 30 years. One time ever, I would really prefer not to go up right now after that person, and it was you. I'm serious. And it's not because you could sing better than me. I think that's kind of a given. I was like, no, something just happened in the room right now that I'm not so sure I can match or do anything better than. And I'm dead serious when I say that to you. And
it's the heart. It's the heart. I mean, I think that I was so open.
Yeah.
I mean, I walked up on stage and just started bawling because I was conquering, and that's what I talked about. I'll cry now.
Yeah.
I was conquering a huge fear.
Yeah.
And I know that that's also the reason why I haven't done more of it. But it's the reason, as I'm crying, the reason I know I need to.
Which is rather remarkable that you, of all people, were uncomfortable getting up in front of a group. But the lesson in it, the reason I bring it up is the lesson. I made a post Saturday about this, like, start a new hobby. Right. You said a new experience. That's the pathway to bliss, everybody. That's the pathway, is to do something new that you feel ill-prepared for, that's a bit scary, but maybe you have some potential proclivity for it. Like, I shouldn't decide that right now I'm going to start doing 360 windmill dunks. It's just not a lot of dudes that are my build that are doing that right now. So it's got to be something that you have some proclivity for, but create a new experience. Like, even if you're great at something, to your point, like, you're the best at what you do, but do you want that to be the entire experience of your life? Yeah. Right? Like, that's the juice of life. And so what I was so proud of you, not even knowing you that day, and then to watch you just go, wow. But I remember thinking, this is probably something she's going to do a lot of. And then really you haven't very much since that time.
No, I haven't since then. Well, but also COVID happened along those lines
that's
too.
True.
So, but it is something that I just had this huge meeting the other day with my team, and I'm like, that is on the docket of things to walk into. You
just got introduced to a couple million more people who want you to do it, so it's really good.
I did a chant record during the middle of COVID because I felt like people needed it, which was something new for me. I've never kind of branched out and did that, and then I think that kind of, that informed this new record. And I'm also working on a chant too at the moment, so I'm wanting to create this whole like sound experience for people.
You guys, when she does this, it's unreal. It's unreal. She did it that day. It's unreal. It's unreal. You said sometimes you're slipping a little bit, like you go, I didn't have a good morning today or whatever. I heard you say this a while ago. I'm going to bring up something you said that might help you today and help everybody else.
I would love that.
And it's something that I do. So like you said something about all you've accomplished in your life. It's like looking back and going, man, I've accomplished some things. Everybody listening to this has overcome so many things in their life they don't give themselves credit for. Yeah. But one of the things that's helped me, like I wrote my book, the last book I wrote is really a lot about my childhood and my dad and drinking. My dad got sober and it's a great story, but there's a lot of power for me, even when I'm having bad days as a grown 51-year-old man. Usually, everyone, I want you to hear this. Now we're going deep, but this is for LeAnn too. Usually the 51-year-old man is not having the experience that's so bad. It's me as a little boy who, like the 51-year-old dude, is like living it out again. Even if he hasn't had, like I'll go 3 months, I'm doing great. I haven't had a lot of anxiety, I haven't had a lot of worry. I've had some, and then like, bam, it comes back again. Or bam, imposter syndrome, or bam, I'm insecure. Or one of my new things the last 5 or 8 years has been like, is it worth it? Like I do this thing with me, is it worth it? You know, it's just this weird game you play with yourself. And for me, one of the pathways out is I go back to this sounds corny. I know this for some of my dudes listening to this, but I go back to me, the little boy, and I have a little conversation. I don't have the conversation with just the 51-year-old me who's going through it. I go back to the little boy. I just give him a hug and say, hey man, everything's going to be okay. You're going to have a great life. You're going to be amazing. You're loved. You're special. You're powerful. You're giving. And somehow there's a lot of power that happens to me when I go back to him. Number one, I kind of heal that little dude, but it also automatically sort of gives me a perspective that I'm no longer that little boy. I'm 51. I've had a pretty good life in between. You said something. You said, I got to learn, or I'm learning how to love myself as a little girl. Like, have you done that? And does that help you when you do it? You did it this morning.
I did. Okay. I just put my hand on my heart because I know it's activated. Like you're saying, I know when this is happening. This is not LeAnn, the 40-year-old woman.
Yeah.
And I just put my hand on my heart. I'm like, it's okay. Like, it's okay. And sometimes just that moment of breaking the pattern, the mind pattern of ruminating or whatever it may be, just a moment of compassion is so helpful. And I think that's when I was saying, you know, there's this like piece of me that I've kind of learned how to move aside, that when that little girl is super activated, it's like that's the piece that I'm not getting rid of her. I'm not like pushing her down. I'm just saying you can step over here and I've got this. Yeah. And we'll come back to you. We'll come back and you're always there. Like, you know, there's not, I think for so long there was such a disassociative piece for me of having to, like I said, come out of that freeze state and work. And so I had to disassociate. And so I'm now not disassociating, but bringing all of me into the room. And that means bringing my anxiety and my fear and all of those things right along with me.
Really, really good, LeAnn. That's really, really good. This is why I do the show. I only do one a week, and I do it because I think like someone's life's going to change. And today, like lots of lives are changing because we're just human. With the symptoms of how we live out parts of these wounds we have is different, but the disease is the same for all of us. The disease is very similar. I'm curious. I've always wanted to ask somebody who's extraordinary. So I know what it's like. I think like I don't know what my gift is. I think it's probably when I'm on stage speaking, I can feel there's just something there. Could you share with me and everyone, what does it feel like when you're in your genius? Like, what is going on in you? Do you know when you're singing and it's a crowd and you're just in that, I want to take you there for a minute.
Yeah.
You're in this, like you're doing potentially one of the things certainly you were born to do, right? You're in your calling. You're in one of your purposes. I say one of because you are more than that, but let's be real. There's a spiritual energy, a God experience happening. What's happening in you? Because like it might be for an auto mechanic. It's like when they're really fixing that engine, right? They're in their calling, they're in their thing. So it can be our geniuses are different, but we all have a genius. Do you know? Can you consciously go there for a minute? I don't know if you ever thought about it. What's happening in you?
Which, you know, what's really interesting is I can be in that and still be completely judgmental of myself
as you're doing it. Come on now. What do you mean?
I can totally be in doing whatever I'm doing and still have like all the fear and the anxiety and judgment. Okay. And then there is and no one would know. Like there's no real, which is what's so trippy. Like there's no difference in me. There's a difference in me inside, but there's no difference to other people out there. Wow. I just it's like a switch that you flip, and it's like whatever, nothing that's working through me nothing I'm doing humanly is going to get in the way of it. But there are times when I can just move over, like I said, that's kind of move over this piece of me that wants to judge and do all the things. I can move it over to the side and really connect with that and allow it to envelop me. And when that happens, I feel like it's just it's like, it's a drug. Yeah. It's a high. If, it's the one place where, I can go and get lost. Like if I can get past all the stuff going on in my head, I get lost and found all at the same time.
Yeah.
It's
that's beautiful.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's what's been so challenging for me, to have had that experience from such a young age. Yeah. Life outside of that has felt really boring. And it's been and it's so anxiety inducing, because all I really want to do, it's like I said, it's a drug. All I really want to do is get back to that connection with that thing that works through me.
I would imagine the thing that's most resembling it is love you have for Eddie.
Yeah. I think any kind of love. Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's what it is.
Yeah, I do too.
That's what speaks through. And that's that open-heartedness, like that. I feel like and I feel like that's been such a challenge for me in this world too, is my heart's just always been like this big thing walking around, like fully open.
I think there's a gift you're giving. I think, by the way, I go to the mechanic because I think it's such a great contrast, but it's not. You're doing it like you're giving your gift to humanity when you're doing it, whatever that is. If you're great at gardening, giving your gift to humanity.
Mothering. Anybody who mothers, like, I mean.
Mothering, right.
It's.
Fathering.
Yeah, all the things.
Right.
It's, something as I say simple. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be on stage for this to be happening. Correct. You just have to be present. I think for me.
Full presence.
I think for me, it's presence. And that's when, if I can.
You're so good at this. You should be doing this.
Yeah, for me, it's presence. It's, when I can fully hand myself over, it's presence and surrender. And we only have presence, right, when we surrender to what is in this moment. So and I think that's why I've learned to walk on stage with the fear, with the anxiety, and not judge it and let that be part of my experience. It's like what I did at Lewis's event. It's like I walked on stage and said, I'm fearful. If you want to know what being scared shitless and doing it anyway looks like, that's me.
You literally said that.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. And I've learned if the greatest piece of who we are is our vulnerability when it comes to being able to stand on stage like that and share. For a parent, it's like, when you yell at your kid and then you can go back and be like, I'm sorry. I was angry at that moment in time. When you can go back and be vulnerable with your kid, it's the vulnerability is what is the genius. It's the open-heartedness that happens there. It's when you can bring all of you to the moment and be present with what is, instead of trying to like put on this mask, to face the world. And yeah, you know what? It's interesting because sometimes it hurts more. Like sometimes that is even more painful to be on stage in that. But it also, what can come back at you?
Yes.
And what can come through you? What I've learned recently is it's harder to withhold. It's harder. It's more painful to withhold love than the vulnerability, the pain of the vulnerability of giving it all.
Oh wow! Because
ultimately, I had a show the other night where the crowd was really quiet, and of course I take that and I'm like, I'm horrible. I'm not doing a great job, and all of a sudden I was like, no, I'm going to perform for me, and I did. It took me. I had to be aware enough to get to that place where I can go, I'm gonna perform the best for me because I love me and I want to have this experience. And so it wasn't about anybody else in that moment. And now what I've learned, it's like, okay, how can I create the experience I want for myself? And I invite people in.
Yes.
Because it's not about trying to get their love. It's about trying to be all of me for me.
That's your thing right there. That's your moment of
That's
change.
it. Yes.
For me,
so there you took me to it finally.
No, you found it. No, the full presence thing, I need to process that actually when we're done. because you're 100% right. And when I'm in whatever my geniuses are, especially like when I'm speaking or with my children, time changes too. Like I'm fully present. I lose track of time. I'm fully vulnerable. I'm fully open. When I speak, that happens on stage. A funny thing that you say. Someone called me last week. They're like, "Did you speak at so-and-so event?" Because I spoke the day after you. And they're like, "The crowd was terrible." And I had that same thing. I'm up there. I'm like, "What am I? I think I'm doing what I do, you know." And it's just, they're so quiet. And I couldn't see the crowd. And I went into that, oh gosh, I better ramp. What am I doing? Like, I'm, you wouldn't know, just like you said when you're singing, I'm having this horrific conversation with myself as I'm just blowing and going. And then, so I really had this really kind of stressful experience up there, and I'm doubling down. And then at the end, they put the lights on. Everyone's crying. It wasn't that they weren't with me. They were being emotional with what I had said. So sometimes our own insecurities can come in and interrupt our presence.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you said there's a high, is there a low after? I relate. Yeah. Is there a low after?
There's a real low after.
What's it like? When? Soon? Like you're in the car on the drive back?
Yeah. It happens probably within 45 minutes of coming off stage. I feel like I get hit by a truck. And it lasts for, until I go back on stage. I mean, if we're doing 3 shows in a row, like I can kind of keep it, a bit of the high going because I'm still having to keep myself, kind of in that mode of go mode. But then when I come home, it's like I at least have to have a day where I'm like decompressing, and I can go into like a bit of a depressed state because it's, and then it's a dopamine hit. And I've been having dopamine hits my whole life. And I'll look for them. Like I'll definitely, like, I find myself looking for dopamine hits all the time.
Me too.
And I recognize it, once again, awareness. But it's just the way my body has been built, and I've had to really learn how to work with that because I started that. My system got produced, like turned into that so young.
So young.
Yeah,
I knew you were going to say that, and I knew you were going to say decompress, and I knew that it was soon. Because for me, like when I speak, it's in the car on the way to leave. I already feel it, and I think it's just the vibrational frequencies change, the energies change so much, the dopamine's leaving my body. But a functioning person, I think, has the ability to. We both know it's a chemical issue in our brains, but there should be other things when I leave there that would produce it. Like being able to call my wife ought to produce that same thing if I'd be just as present with her as I was with these 17,000 people I was just speaking in front of, or whatever it is, right? So, and here's what it's come down to for me. So I'm going to go I'm leading to a place.
Yeah.
Maybe my favorite conversation we've had on the show, by the way. That's no disrespect to anybody else, but maybe my favorite. Because everyone just got to listen in to me and LeAnn talk about our stuff, which hopefully helps you.
It's therapy.
Which helps you. But I have uncovered something maybe the last year or two about me. I'm good at loving people, man. I love people. I think one of the reasons I'm pretty good in front of a group or the show or with friends is I love people. And I think they feel it and I think people feel it from you too. I am still not good at getting love from other people.
Oh, yeah, I understand that.
And I have people that really love me, but it's almost like I don't know how to explain it. Like I really almost never sit there and go, I'm loved. Like I can't believe I'm saying this on the show right now. I can't, because I have fans and friends and children and family and spouse but I just don't allow it in. It doesn't mean I don't appreciate it. Actually, I can appreciate that they love me and not feel it, if that makes any sense. And I would like to figure that out. I think that's the thing.
If you figure that out, let me know, because I'm working on it too. Like I really have to focus on, people will give me a compliment and I will sit there and really work to take it in.
Me too.
Because it's so challenging. It's like it doesn't penetrate.
That's it.
Yeah.
It doesn't penetrate.
Yeah. And I'm with you. I have people around me who love me so very much. And it's so interesting because I think with me when I talking with you, when I'm on stage with people, I want people to feel less alone, because I know that's been one of my core pieces, is like I've felt so lonely in this world. And I want people to feel less alone. And so that's why I share so openly. Like, we're so similar in so many ways. And and someone in our position can share about these things,
Mm-hmm.
it really does. Like, it gives people hope and it makes them feel less lonely. And so I think that's, for me, the loving piece is like, it's almost like, I think my nurturance comes out in that way with other people. And I'm starting to learn how to do it for myself. And then the next part is letting the love of others in, because I know it's there. It's so obvious.
It's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the thing. And for me, it's like, even talking about it with you and several other people that are listening, helps me, because it's like, it becomes more apparent to me that I am.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes more apparent to me that I should. It's almost like I've just spent too much of my life. I think everybody might relate to this. Just, I'll get around to that. Like, let me figure all these other things out. And then I'm sure there'll be this time I'll just sit on a beach somewhere and it's just going to happen.
Yeah.
But that's not really how the reason therapy works so well is, like, I think you're hearing yourself talk more than anything oftentimes.
Totally.
And so
that's why writing is so great too. It's like you're really working it out for yourself.
What would you say to someone who says, I kind of share this with you? I'll make you work at this right now. Someone says, I would like to feel a little bit more loved myself. Mm-hmm. So don't advise you, because you probably wouldn't do it for you. What would you say to them? And I'm seeing you're looking up, which means you're really thinking.
Yes, I am really thinking.
So what would your answer be?
That they want to feel more loved.
Yeah, to allow that to happen.
Well, I always go back to how deeply are you loving yourself? Because I think ultimately it's this.
Good answer, yeah.
It's this belief that we're not worthy of it. Mm-hmm. So the more we can actually love from the inside out, the more we'll believe that we're worthy of the outside in.
Yeah.
And so I think that's that's like I said, that's my next piece, or what I'm toying with and playing with in my life right now, is that I'm being kinder to myself. I'm loving myself more. I'm loving my own choices more. Like, they don't have to be dictated by the outside world. Like, I loved creating this record, and I get so much out of it because it's the connection I have with not only people but myself. Like, I'm doing things that I love. So I think it's when we can come from that place, then we start to believe, maybe eventually,
you're right,
that we're worthy of it from the outside.
You're right. The reason that I struggle with it, and we only have a few more minutes, you guys, like, this is one of these things just flew by, but I don't do this to other people. I do it to me. I really stack my mistakes against myself. Mm-hmm. I mean, even like stuff people don't know that's a mistake.
Do you ruminate on your mistakes?
Yeah,
those are fun.
Yeah. Like, but I actually think having friends who share this with you makes it easier.
It does.
Because I'm like, okay, I'm not completely alone on this.
No.
You said about feeling alone. Like, I'm not alone in this. And I just stack my mistakes. Like, hey man, like I don't do that with my other friends, but like with me, it's like, you did this, you didn't do that very well. You didn't do, and then the stuff that I do very well is like, well, of course you do. You're good at that. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Does anyone relate to what I'm saying right now? I'm like, well, of course you're already good at that. That doesn't count.
Exactly. It doesn't count.
Yeah, it doesn't count.
Exactly. I could go on stage and do an amazing show, and
it doesn't count. You're already good at that.
Well, yeah, just that's what I do. Like,
isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
it's really a form of crazy.
But if I beat my husband at tennis, then that one like really counts. So.
Isn't that so weird? We're so, you know what? You all have to accept at some point, being human is just interesting.
It is. I say that all the time. I'm like, this is such an interesting thing.
It is,
and but you have to laugh about it at some point.
Yes.
Like all the crazy habits we get ourselves into, and the beliefs, and at some point there has to be some humor in it.
There has to be humor, and what we said earlier is it's not like a one moment. No. We're chipping away at ourselves. We're improving, we're evolving, we're growing, and I think you have to give yourself credit. I do these things I've described much less than I used to.
Exactly.
Much less. I just think I had this notion that at some point there was going to be this aha. I'm like, I'm never going to be down again.
I think I felt that way too. And I think that's kind of that's what we're fed, right? I mean, that's in this world. It's kind of like the lie, the big lie.
That is the big lie.
Yeah. And
the other big lie, by the way, is that you're further from it. So I say this in my book. The Bible says, where there's no vision, the people will perish. Well, you got to dig a little deeper on that. People have vision. Like if I said, do you want to be happy or sad? What's your vision? If you're like, I want to be happy. Would you like to have some money or be poor?
Right.
I'd probably like to have some money. Do you want to contribute and make a difference or not? So you have a vision. The lie is that you're super far away from it.
Yeah.
That you think it's 25 years away. And so because that's the lie you've believed, you behave and have you don't, but most people do. They have a pattern. Well, you do in one thing with being happy or not being depressed, but you keep it so far away. And so you create these patterns in your life to perpetually keep your dreams and your vision that far away from you. And perhaps this is a breakthrough for me that I don't do it with like achievements. I just do it with emotions. I think I do with emotions. I think I'm just hearing myself say this right now, but like I haven't done it with money or success or a show, or I've done it with like the emotion of bliss. I'm like, it's just far away.
Yeah.
And so I keep it there.
I get you. And you know what I've been doing recently, and we always hear about gratitude lists.
Yes.
And I always think for myself, like, that's the simplest, dumbest thing to do.
Yeah.
And I did it a long time ago, and I remember it really helping.
Yeah.
And so I started it about a week ago.
Okay.
And now I go through my whole day and I'm starting to notice, like, oh, I'm really grateful for a conversation. I'm really grateful for this ice water.
Yeah.
Like, I'll start to, it'll start to add up.
Yep.
And it's really helping me. So simple.
Good for me though. Yeah.
But you're saying that those, the bliss that you're keeping so far away from you, it's like, oh no, there's little moments of joy
all the time. Yep.
Even amidst the anxiety and everything that I have going on. And that's what I loved. I was never going to get out of this morning at all. I was going to come in here because I was like, you know what? I'm going to enjoy this conversation and I'm going to walk out of there feeling different. It's like going to the gym sometimes. It's like, once I get there, it's like, oh, this feels really good.
Yeah.
So, I think for me, it's.
But you helped several million people today. And let me tell you something. Listen to me on this. You're not good at this. You are this. You should be doing more of this. Just trust me. I do it. I know when I see it. Like I know. Really, I'm really kind of decent at it too. And I know when I see somebody that is. This will be the most shared show I've ever done because we've hit on topics that really matter to people, and two people that maybe, well, in your case anyway, people really look up to are going to be like, wow, that was the most vulnerable conversation between two people I probably ever damn heard, and they don't have every answer, but success leaves clues. There was a bunch of clues in there, and one or two of these works for me.
And keep asking questions. Curiosity is so important. Curiosity is so important. And I remember I used to be such a curious child, and once again, that innocence piece, it's like our curiosity.
That's imagination.
It goes, it just kind of like drifts.
Yep.
And we have to come back to that. Like, you start asking questions.
I think we're onto it. I'm telling you guys, you've got to start to just give yourself the gift of imagining and dreaming and curiosity. And when a history and memory keeps popping, listen, there's going to be a story for your life. If you keep telling the same story over and over again, you're going to keep repeating the same chapters. If you just start to imagine, are curious about the next chapters, you try some different things. You walk on stage at an event, you go, I'm terrified, but I'm going to do this.
Yes.
I'm going to try this new hobby. I'm going to start I'm going to get good at CrossFit. I'm going to do whatever it is. I'm going to start writing. I'm going to journal. You're going to find gifts within you that were always there. You don't have to chase them. They're there, but they'll be revealed to you when you go into these spaces that LeAnn's described today. Okay, one last thing.
Yes.
Speaking of spaces, make sure you go, guys, get God's work, but also you're going on a Christmas tour. If we don't promote that, we've made a big mistake.
Yes.
So it's December 2nd through the 18th.
Yep.
Where are you going? Like New York,
we
Iowa?
Going, East Coast. We'll come back to the West Coast in Oregon.
Okay.
We're going to be in Iowa. I don't remember. Oh, we're going to be in Nashville at the Ryman.
Ooh, cool.
So a bunch of different places, but I always do a holiday tour, and I have a plethora of holiday songs.
You got some big words in there too.
It is.
See?
I've got quite the catalog of holiday music.
Where do they go figure it out? Where do they go find it?
LeAnnRimes.com. They can just go find everything on there. Check it
I
out.
love you. I think you're awesome.
Thank you. I so enjoyed this. This was a blast.
Me too. I knew it would be.
And I feel so much better now.
Good. I do too. Well, a lot of people do. One last question. Someone runs into LeAnn Rimes at Starbucks. You never know, guys. It could happen. It's possible. Hypothetically. And they say, hey, I have a dream. Just like you had, and I would like to make my dream come true. I want to sing. I want to paint. I want to start a business. I want a family. I want to be a millionaire. I want to start a shelter for homeless people, whatever it might be. I just would wonder what your advice would be. If you give me one little piece of advice from someone it's funny, listening to the two of us talk today, you think neither one of us ever made any of our dreams come true. We've made lots of them come true. It's something you've been incredible at doing. What advice would you give to that person who would ask that question to you?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
For me, like when I think about all that I've created, it's, you're right. The vision is there. It's this desire, whatever is such a deep desire that you are motivated every day to get up and do that thing. And start asking, start getting curious. Ask. For me, it's like when I think of how I create with energy, create with the universe. And so it's like, just start asking, show me. And for me, and then that's when life starts getting really interesting, because you'll start to meet people, or things will start falling into your lap. And that's when you have to go down the path. Like, it will open up to you. Now you have to walk through the door. Yeah. And I think that's where us believing we're worthy, us taking our vulnerabilities and our humanity and doing it anyway. Yeah. That's where all that has to come into play. Because it's interesting how many opportunities we'll miss when we think I'm not worthy of that, or I can't show up, just as I am today. Yeah. So I think when you just start asking the questions, the things will show up in your life. It's proven in your brain, everybody. I talk about it in the book. It's your matrix. It's the RS. That's why when she said earlier that she finds things she's grateful for, now those things they were always in your awareness. Yes. They were in your visual field, your auditory field, your sensory field. When you ask and when you're intentional about something, it heightens your sensory acuity. Your vision, your auditory, and your kinesthetic begins to touch, feel, hear, see things that were always there, that you were oblivious to because they weren't part of your matrix and your intention before. She is 1,000,000% right about it. Like, what a freaking killer conversation today. It was Thanks so good. Me. Was it not unreal? Yay. So good. Share this with everybody. Fastest growing show on the planet. Number 1. Why? Awesome. Because it's awesome. That's why. It's awesome. So, hey, guys, share it with anybody that you love and you care about. And, man, I'm grateful for this experience. Thank you. Me too. Thanks for having me. I'm glad you came in anyway today. Yes. It's really good. All right, everybody. God bless you. Max out.